Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasiewicz.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. My name is Christian Karasiewicz, and this is episode 284. And Jim, I know we've got a lot of great topics we want to talk about today, but I actually have to say this is probably one of our best guests that we've ever had on the show. Actually, I'm surprised that I haven't had Jeff on for just in the number of years that I've been running this show. But today we're going to be talking about Clubhouse's, right, we think this is Clubhouse's marketplace, way to monetize your audio rooms. We're going to be discussing some TikTok ad libraries, which I think are actually really interesting. You can actually learn a lot from this. We're also going to be discussing an update to Twitter as well, for those of you who like to tweet out your videos. And I think, Jim, there's a photo update as well that we're going to share there as well. But I am really excited about this week's guest. Can you do me a favor? Can you tell our viewers who is our guest for episode 284?
Individual Jeff Sieh, the manly Pinterest guy. Yes, there are men that use Pinterest, and if there's anyone that knows how to use it, it's Jeff. So I know we've got a couple questions for him about that. He also has a new show, Social Media News Today, that he's doing on multiple platforms. He's definitely, I would say, a leading edge guy, always trying new things when it comes to live video and other stuff, and works with a lot of different people, helping them with their brands. So excited to have Jeff on. I've had a chance to hang out with Jeff when we could do things in person at a couple conferences, and so really glad to have him join us today.
Definitely, yeah. So, Jeff, I'm going to go and bring you on. Thanks a lot. Hopefully, Jim did a good job introducing you.
Yeah, he's great. Jim's awesome. We've been social distance for so long, but last time we hung out at Social Media Market World, got some food. Yeah, looking forward to those days happening again. So
yeah,
it's going to be weird, getting back together with people, because you have to
actually wearing pants.
Introduce yourself. Exactly, right? Like, yeah. I don't know if you heard, like most businesses that are, say they sell like custom clothing, or they're like a personal stylist. They're only selling the tops. People aren't buying the bottoms.
I wore jeans the other day, and I felt like I was, it was like Sunday church. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, jeans. I mean,
well, that's like I was working with a clothier like before all this, and they keep bugging her like, "Hey, you need new clothes?" It's like, I'm not even wearing the clothes I bought.
That's
I mean, so it's like, why would I buy more?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. So hopefully things will go back to normal soon. Again, I mean, the great thing about what has happened is that it has pushed things forward, I think, from a technological standpoint. I mean, we've moved from, your standard social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and, YouTube and whatnot, over into like obviously Instagram and then TikTok. And now we're big into audio rooms. Like everyone is doing audio rooms. So this is, I know we're going to talk a little bit about Clubhouse here, but yeah, audio rooms, so Jim, where do you want to start from a topic standpoint this week?
Well, you talked about at the top here. Let's talk about Clubhouse's attempt to allow their creators to monetize, I guess, with this Clubhouse.io. It's an interesting concept. I mean, I think, and I know this is a question we have for Jeff a little bit later, right? Allowing people to monetize their Clubhouse presence, right? There's people that I think literally are spending hours and hours a day on Clubhouse. I was actually able to start a Clubhouse club. I think that was something they rolled out a couple weeks ago, and of course, people were going crazy if you're on Clubhouse. Which, unfortunately, I say this is iOS only right now, and I think maybe we'll hit on why I think Twitter Spaces is a better thing in that regards. It's allowing you to have branded rooms, and right, you can, I guess, shout out sponsorships. So it'll be interesting to see if businesses are interested in people doing that for them. I mean, because there's I think, I don't know, the numbers keeps changing. I think there's maybe 6 to 10 million people on Clubhouse right now. I'm not sure of the latest numbers, but I think I remember hearing 6 million somewhere. And but the whole thing is this going to continue? Because we have competition with Twitter Spaces, and then we're going to talk about Facebook is also now launching its audio version. But I think it's always good to give people a chance to do this. But is that, it's kind of that, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you want to monetize, or do you need to establish? Because this thing could go away, right? We always hear from, and I think you guys might have been some of those early live streamers, like the days of Blab or Meerkat, right? It could go away in a heartbeat.
Don't forget about Hangouts, by the way, Google Hangouts.
That's what I cut my teeth on, is Google Plus Hangout. That's where I built my following. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I made a lot of great. I mean, that's, I think, how I connected with Mike Alton and several other folks was with Google Hangouts. It was, and Google Plus.
Yeah.
I missed that. It was nice because, right, it was like, it was quiet, right? You didn't see all this
those
noise.
circles. It was like, you could do whatever you wanted to on Google Plus.
So what do you guys think? I mean, first off, is this a real app, or is this a real feature from Clubhouse? I don't know if you guys have been able to figure that out.
I talked about it a little bit before the show. We kind of looked over there, and it's hard to tell. I have a feeling it's a third party thing, because I didn't see like official Clubhouse thing. It's kind of weird that they didn't say this. There is this whole cottage industry that has grown up around Clubhouse. There are people there who are professional Clubhouse hosts. They have a massive following, and you pay them money, and they will come in and moderate your rooms. And I'm all for, people making money. I think it's, these guys they're entrepreneurs, and they're doing a lot of hustle over there. So more power to them. It's not my thing, but it's interesting how this has grown up. And I love the people who, like, the early adopters, and then the guys who are thinking about how to monetize it. One of the questions I know, Chris, you sent me was like, should we monetize, or should we like build a platform? And for me, I think if you're a business, you're always thinking about monetization, but the issue is not to do it in a creepy or salesman-y way. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that salesman-y stuff over on Clubhouse. I went to saw a room the other day. It was like Millionaires Breakfast Club, and I was like, how about we have like guy trying to get his kids through college and just his head above water and eating an off-brand cereal room. That kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's a little bit of spammy. I mean, and I get that. I mean, the Grant Cardones and all that, it's kind of cool to connect with them and stuff, but it's getting noisy. But I still think social audio has a role to play in networking. And for me, it's never been going over there and like getting them in the top of my funnel and all that kind of stuff. It's more been networking, and how do we, the relationships happen. Like, after this live show, going, hey, we're going to start a Clubhouse room. If you guys want to continue the conversation and maybe have them have a chance to connect with the hosts or continue the conversation. I like that kind of stuff, because that feels more organic to me and not so used carsman-y, salesy kind of stuff. And on that note, we were talking about Google Plus before. I cut my teeth on Google Plus, and so one of the things right now that I'm really psyched that I do is I am the producer and editor for Guy Kawasaki's podcast and his live show. Nice. That I traced all the way back to me making a post on Google Plus on Peg Fitzpatrick's thing, and that grew a relationship. We got to meet real life, and she got me this gig with Guy Kawasaki because she runs all the social stuff. So I mean, it doesn't matter, I don't think, what platform, Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, whatever, as long as you're there networking and doing it in a way that adds value. So that's my rant.
No, very good point. And the other side to that is, if you're somebody, and this is a business sort of pitch, I guess, in a way, if you're somebody who wants to get into business, for example, and you're not doing the networking and you're just going through the motions, it's a whole, like, tree falls in a forest thing. You have to be doing some networking. So incorporate, maybe you need to restructure your week and say, hey, you know what? I need to spend 25% of my week doing this, which means I have less time for, other things, but it's the networking piece, because then that's going to help you get outside, that whole like cone that basically exists, of you with the same people you always hang out with. So Yeah.
For example, like Jim and I met, like I mentioned, at Social Media Marketing World. Jim didn't come up and go, "Hey, Jeff, come be on my show because I can do this, this, and this for you." We sat down and had a meal together and just chewed the fat and talked about stuff and where are you from and all this. And then that progressed to, like, he helped me out with getting on Amazon Live, and I come on a show and I introduce him to people. So it's that kind of stuff, and that's what you need for businesses, instead of this, like, okay, how many people can I get in my funnel today kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, and I think
yeah.
I think that's the thing I've seen with Clubhouse is, right, you get these people, like, even in their bios, it's like, they've got their Cash App and their Venmo, and
Right.
I just don't necessarily get that, but somehow it's a thing, and you do see that, right? Now, and what's funny though, Jeff, is I think there have been some people that, if you want to call it, almost create these parody rooms, to your point, like you know help me get my kids through college room, and, they're truly being just sarcastic, because to me those rooms, like you're talking about, the Millionaire Breakfast Club, I just is a turnoff. I mean,
Right.
and you don't, and see, that's the thing, I haven't seen that on Twitter Spaces.
Yeah.
And I do think where Twitter, in a sense, has the advantage right now over Clubhouse is, and so I wonder if at some point Clubhouse will take Twitter handles off, because it's available on Android, right? So I can go out on Twitter Spaces, and any of my friends or people that want to join me on Twitter Spaces can join, even if they have an Android phone. So Madeline Sklar, Twitter Smarter
Right.
today at 2, has been doing a Twitter Spaces at 5 with the guest, and she gets a lot of people that maybe didn't even make the chat. So I think there's a lot to be said to exactly what you talked about with the post-show hangout, so to speak, to steal a phrase from Google.
Yeah, I just, so I think Clubhouse is what we needed at the time. I mean, because we're all locked down, we missed our conferences, all that kind of stuff. But I think that, like you said, Twitter Spaces allows us, if you go like, hey, let's go live, and let's go on and continue this conversation after this live show. Well, the thing is like, you're going to lose half of your people, because it's Clubhouse is still invite only, and it's iOS. And so why not go to Twitter Spaces, where anybody who has a Twitter account, which is probably most people, can come on and connect with you, talk if they want to. The social audio thing, I think it's going to stick around even when we start opening it up, because some people don't like coming on like camera, like we had to get up and all the stuff to get this ready. I'm telling you,
I gotta put clothes on. I got to put pants
exactly.
on. I mean,
and being able to connect with people, audio, and ask questions, I think that's genius. And I'm always talking about Lou Mongello, who does Walt Disney World Radio, old time podcaster. The way he's built his brand and built his community, it was shut down and they still supported me, still made money and all that stuff. But he has a call-in thing where people can call into his show. Well, you could do that same kind of thing with Clubhouse now. I mean, with Twitter Spaces, and have that connection where people can feel like it's almost like old time, Larry King, like, hello caller, and let them talk to you, which I think is really, really valuable if we can strategize it and do it in the right way.
Yeah. It's like everything in moderation, right, Jeff? I mean, because I know I found myself, and I was able to stop getting sucked into the Clubhouse dark hole, where I was on for 6 straight hours one time.
Oh man, yeah,
like,
I know.
Oh, this has got to stop. And so I think if anything, that's made me, and maybe wrong, but leery of the audio apps, and like, it's really easy to get sucked into, but it is like listening to a live radio talk show that you can actually jump in, which is nice, right? You don't, I mean, you still got to wait in line for you to be identified as a caller to talk sometimes, but I think it's actually, to your point, I think it's going to stick around. But then it was funny because I saw on Twitter where somebody's like, when we moved to this next topic on Facebook and this thread, it was like, it says private audio with friends. They said, didn't we used to call that phone calls?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I said something in a talk the other day. I said, yeah, it was like I was kind of getting a dial tone, and nobody knew what I was talking about. I was like, my kid's like, dial tone? What are you talking about? So.
All right, the best would be if they're like, oh, hey, I really love that, like that new effect that sound effect that my phone has, and it could be like the dial tone as like an alarm or something like that.
Yeah.
Really fascinating. I mean, I think social audio is I still think there are a few challenges with it. And I think that's the fact that people want to also see the person.
Mhm.
They go on a social audio platform and they're like, they can hear people, which is great. But there's also still, I feel like there's that awkward pause because you kind of don't know when the person's finished speaking. And then you don't want to make it so robotic where they're like, hey, I'm finished speaking.
Yeah,
So
right. Yeah.
Well, and along those same lines, what do you guys think? Because I think what you're seeing also is right. Like right now, Clubhouse allows you to have these rooms, but you're not supposed to record unless you let everyone know up front. And so I
Mhm.
think when you know that you're in a conversation that's not going to be recorded or repurposed without your permission, so to speak, you're maybe a little bit more open than if you know that, oh, well, wait, somebody might record this. I might say something I regret and, it lives forever. What
Mhm.
are your guys' thoughts there?
I Yeah, I think people, I mean, because to be honest, I can record anything with my sound, my Rodecaster Pro. I mean, I can just hit a record
yep.
button no matter what. And so I
Mhm.
think people just need to realize that, yeah, people can listen. I mean, I tried telling this to my kids, like, we've all probably, whatever you post up there, even though it says it's going to go away, don't trust that. It
Big.
can live forever and people are getting in trouble for it. So I just think there's some education that happens. But yeah, I've done the recording thing, and I know some other people have too. And it's a little weird because you have to go like, okay, give permission, because it's kind of a gray area on Clubhouse. I'm not sure
Mhm.
how Twitter Spaces is going to handle that, or even Facebook audio thing that's coming out. But yeah, so I think that my whole thing would be like continuing the conversation. So we did that with Tailwind Show, which I run and am a host of. Their bi-weekly thing. And so we had like, hey, by the way, after the show, if you want to talk to us, we're going to be over on Twitter Spaces. And then it was like, not a ton of people showed up. We probably had 10 or so, but
Mhm.
they got to ask questions that we had brought up to their show, and they felt really comfortable. And they were really excited that they could do that because it was pretty low barrier to entry. They didn't have to, get a link to call in or, that kind of stuff. They just went on Twitter Spaces and got in the room and was able to ask the question. So I really like that. And I can see, you can even use this around conferences when those start opening up, like, get people together. Hey, let's all go over here in Spaces, and we're going to figure out what we're going to eat, and meetups and all that. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's some really cool social things that can happen, or, even, everybody talked about Twitter being the second screen, like when Lost was coming out, they'd always have those
Mhm.
hashtags that come up. You could do a Twitter Spaces when the game's going on and talk to each
Yeah.
other. There's so many
Yeah.
things that we just don't even know yet.
We were talking about that, Troy Sandage and I talked to, I told Megan Powers because she's a big 49ers fan. When the NFL draft happens, right, we're going to have a
Right.
Twitter space. And here's the thing, right, because all these NFL teams are on Twitter, you could literally invite them, whether they show up or not, when their team is on the clock to say, hey, you want to talk about your pick in Twitter spaces? I
Mhm.
mean, I just think it can be a lot of fun and not just,
Hmm.
especially with sports. I think it could be a lot of fun with sports. And I love your idea. I hadn't really thought about that at conferences as a way to quote unquote meet up in real time. That's a
Hmm.
great idea.
And so we're gonna go back to like the Nextel walkie-talkie feature, maybe
Right.
next. Would
Exactly.
that be next? I don't know. Just wondering. But
Yeah.
you actually get me thinking here about this. So I could see it being very useful. Also, like you get into like the NFL draft, for example. So what's the other thing that's really big right now? NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So for example, it could be maybe capturing a player's audio reaction. For example, like, hey,
Yeah.
the first time they got drafted, it's like that, that NFT that the person could then sell, for example. And I'm not saying you should sell everything, but it's a moment that can be potentially captured.
Yeah,
So,
you could also do it like, so I started doing NBA Top Shot, some of that, and I'm not even a
yeah.
big NBA fan. I just wanted to get into the NFT stuff. And so
Hmm.
pack openings are a big deal. When the pack drops, when you're waiting, you could have those kind of things too. So yeah, I think it's just another way for us to communicate and do it easily, in a kind of a, frictionless way where we can talk to people. So I think it's kind of cool.
And so basically, pack openings are the new unboxing, sort of. I guess is that,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
is it still
it's
under an
crazy
unboxing label?
because one, it's hard to get into the drop. They have the drops and you have to get in line, and most of the time you don't make it in the front of the pack. But when you
Yeah,
do, it's a big deal because some of these, like I got one that's worth $4,000. I mean,
nice,
I've got into one drop, and one of my cards, if I put it for sale, if I look at the other ones close to it, it's about $4,000. So
Wow.
nice, very cool. Yeah, we'll
yeah,
have to talk offline about
yeah,
NFTs
yeah,
more.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I definitely, it's an area of interest. So Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna sort of switch gears, right, Jim? So what's the next topic we're gonna go to?
Well, can you imagine Facebook is actually going to try to come out with its own version of audio rooms or I don't know if they're going to call it, Facebook, I don't know, audio house or what they're going to call it. But they're working on their audio only advantages, or I don't know, call it advantage option as well. The thing that I don't, how many of us are using Facebook Rooms, right? I know that came out as a way to kind of compete with Zoom. I don't know that I've been on one in quite a while. I don't know about you guys. My thing with Facebook, and I say this all the time, right? I'm surprised they haven't like kicked me off yet. They're trying to be all things to all people, and that's never a good thing in business. Focus on what you're good at, right? They're now getting rid of watch parties, right? Because I guess watch parties didn't work. Um, so I mean, I think this was inevitable that they're going to try to do this. I think people are surprised they didn't just try to buy Clubhouse. What'll be curious to see is algorithmically, will they shut down the reach of when people post things about their Clubhouse or about their Twitter Spaces on Facebook?
Mhm.
Will those posts be harder to find? That's something I think that'll be curious. And I don't, I just don't know that I'm going to join these on Facebook. That maybe I'm wrong, maybe in groups, but I just think it's too much.
I think groups would probably be the only way to do that. Like, I think that maybe when, like, if there's a special niche group, like I do wood carving, if there's a wood carving and there's a special carver on Facebook, like somebody I want to learn from, getting on that, being able to ask questions, yeah, that would probably be cool. The thing I'm really scared about is trying to help my mom figure out this new audio feature. Just like, oh no, please, mom, not
Yeah, I
another
already
thing,
tell mine.
Facebook.
I already tell them, yeah, don't mess with Facebook because there's too much out there that's misleading, and so if you're brand new to this, I mean, it all seems like, oh, it's this awesome place, but there's a seedy side of a lot of it too.
Mhm.
So I do like the idea of Facebook getting into audio rooms, but I don't know how many people are going to trust Facebook. I think that's the bigger issue here.
Yeah, are they really recording it? Am I going to say, like, I like Jeeps, and all of a sudden I see Jeep ads everywhere? Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a
Never thought of
conversation actually
that.
with someone the other day about that, and we were literally talking about a topic, and their ads changed on their browser to the exact topic we were talking about, and we were on like
Yeah.
a phone call, I think, or Google Meet
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a
But
little scary.
so let's just throw this out there. Okay, so we think that Twitter Spaces is going to probably overtake Clubhouse, right? Do we think that? And Twitter, by the way, has done a fantastic job. I think like that's the one good thing about the pandemic for Twitter is that they have rolled out some fantastic features to really like turn their platform around. But the fact that like Facebook then is going to come out with this, Instagram's going to come out with this. Do we think that like Twitter will become the dominant audio rooms place?
The thing that the one thing I like about that Twitter has done is they've made it super accessible. They even have that transcribe feature for like the hard of hearing and something, which is a big deal if you think about it. I guess it's built on the Periscope platform, and so I'm hoping that we will be able to download our conversations, or at least a transcript of the conversations afterwards, so we can repurpose it. So, I love this. I mean, I understand why people like this, things that kind of go away after a while. I hate it. I want to keep everything and repurpose it. I mean, I understand, if you want to have a conversation, pick up the phone, I guess. But my thing is I want to use it. Like, that's why, I guess, some of those, like the 24-hour thing that goes away, just kind of like, why do I create content that goes away? I want to repurpose it and use it and search and all that. So that's one of the things that I just think Twitter's the first one out there. I mean, Facebook has so many eyeballs. But just like Jim's point, who uses watch now? I mean, that's the thing. It's like it probably will come out, and us marketers we always destroy everything, nice and pretty, and then so it'll probably go away as like watch did. I have a feeling, because I think Twitter is a place where people go for conversation, news, and they've already rolled it out. So that's what I would guess.
That's a great point, Jeff. I mean, Twitter, I look at Twitter, right? Twitter is all about engagement. That's what the people that don't get Twitter don't understand, whether it's Twitter chats, whether, now that you have Twitter Spaces, conferences, people use it for
Right.
live tweeting to keep up with, that's where right, wrong, or indifferent, that's where I get my breaking news, right? That
Mhm.
stuff will pop up real time. And I think and because it's in a sense really a mobile app first, not necessarily, even though a lot of people use it on desktop, it's just much easier, right? You don't have to, you can be on a Twitter space having a conversation and still be tweeting, and you can even be tweeting out the space to invite more people to join. And that's where platforms like Clubhouse have a disadvantage, right? They don't really have that other
Right.
piece of it. Um, and I think, I don't know about you guys. I hear a lot of frustration from people. Like Facebook seems like they're changing all the time. Like, wait, where'd my thing go? How do I do
Right.
this? They didn't, I didn't get the memo. So I think, I think, I don't know, maybe because they have so much going on, they've made it clunky. Even for people trying to figure out how to tie their Instagram to their Facebook. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't even know why would I want to do audio only on Instagram. I don't know. I mean, I know there's people that
Yeah.
live there.
I mean, the Instagram app is getting way bloated. I mean, you try to figure
Mhm.
out stuff. It's just, where else are they going to put something? I mean, they don't, they're running out of space. So yeah, I totally agree. The other thing, that we didn't talk about in Twitter Spaces, and it sounds like a commercial for Twitter Spaces now, but that I really like the ability to, like, we had somebody who was on that Tailwind show who had a great free giveaway, and
Mhm.
she tweeted it out, and I was able to pin that tweet so everybody in that space could see it, and it comes up to the top. That's just really cool. And Clubhouse doesn't have that kind of thing. You have to do that, mute, unmute really fast to act like you're applauding. But
Yeah.
Twitter has an emoji that comes up. I mean, and so it's what I think Clubhouse wants to be. And so
Mhm.
that's another reason I think it's just those kind of things where you can interact, where you can showcase your guest or a host. I mean, I really like that, because I always like having that be about those people, like I'm interviewing, more than like my stuff. So I think that kind of stuff where you provide value is really, really important.
And on the other side of things, Jeff, you and I were talking about this, but the other big thing I think for audio only platforms is, for example, with Twitter Spaces, you do have that built-in audience. I've got,
Mm,
if I've spent the time to curate my followers and put them into hopefully Twitter lists, hopefully you're using that feature, people. It's the best feature you should use on Twitter, but that you don't use probably. So Twitter Spaces, you already have that built-in audience, whereas Clubhouse, I don't have that audience. On Facebook, I may have that audience, or for example, if somebody's bought their likes, that's not going to guarantee that people are going to
right.
see your content. You're going to still be in the same problem. It's still going to come back to, when we've been saying this like for however many years it's been, with social, like you want to make sure you're selective about who you follow, who you add, because as you do that, that influences your algorithm. And at some point, you're going to end up with a big mess where
Right.
then you're going to either have to say, do I start another account, or do I actually spend the time trying to clean up an existing account?
That's a good point. Really good point. Yeah. And Twitter lists are a great idea. I need to go back and fix mine, but yeah, I think the audience is there. And it's all about interactivity, and that's the thing, is people who understand Twitter and use Twitter a lot, like Jim, like this is adding audio is just like a power tool on top of that already. So
Mhm.
Jim's already involved with Twitter chats and, getting great value and providing value there. Audio is just another level and layer on top of that,
Yeah.
which will just enhance everything and increase his audience and his authority and, the value he brings people. So yeah, I think that's, and it's not in a box like Clubhouse feels like. I mean, it's just right now, it just feels like it's in a box, and it's like a treehouse that you have to have a secret password to get in. I mean, it's just like,
Right.
do you have it? Can I get one? How much? They're selling them on eBay, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just nuts.
That is crazy. So the other one last point real quick about just audio rooms. The other thing I like about the Twitter Spaces side, by the way, is that they've got audio tweets, or some people have audio tweets. Now imagine being able to bring that into a Clubhouse, or sorry, into a Twitter Space, for example, and to be able to like play an audio maybe. I mean, I know you could pin the tweet, but how cool would it be to be able to talk about it and say like, hey, I did this on, Twitter, for example, or on this mastermind or something that I was in, and be able to play that audio clip even
Yeah,
directly in Spaces.
I think that's genius. So like, I would use it like, Guy interviewed Jane Goodall. There's a clip from Jane Goodall. Hey,
Mhm.
let's talk about what she said about climate change in this Twitter space room. that would be, like you said, that would really drive the conversation, even as a pre, Twitter Spaces thing. I mean, I think that's going to be really, really cool, especially for podcasters.
Oh, the repurposing of this. I mean,
right.
it just like goes out the door. So much you could do here. So very cool. I mean, obviously, Clubhouse, the Club Market feature, Facebook audio rooms, all like really good to see just the push into audio. We'll see where this goes over the next few months. One area that I know most of us are not very familiar with this area, and that's TikTok.
Right.
So I want to talk about this, and I think there's a lot of benefit to this, but it's how many of you or either of you really using TikTok very much?
Not really.
I get clips from my daughter. She loves to send me funny clips, and so I see that. And so, we were talking about before the show, and everybody talks about TikTok, and everybody, when you're in the marketing space, like you have to be on TikTok or you have to be on, Clubhouse. You have to, and like after a while, you're like, yeah, I have to go take a nap right now. So the thing that I really, TikTok is great because, and I wish more platforms do this, they're paying creators. It seems like they understand that their platform is built on creators' content, and they're giving them money. There you go. And so I think it's really interesting. And then they're making their ads pretty cool how they self-serve some of the things, and they seem to be really on top of this compared to some of the other platforms. Once again, and we talked about this in the past, is like, okay, the security issue. And what's your return on investment on TikTok? Like if you're running ads or stuff. So like my son's girlfriend has gone viral on TikTok. Didn't make any money, but she went viral. So what does that mean? What does virality mean on some of these platforms where people are mostly consuming that content for education? How do businesses sneak in there? Because most businesses are not funny. They really aren't. And if they try to be funny, it's really, really sad. So you got to be careful on that. You've got to know it. You can't just throw money, I don't think, at TikTok ads and think it's going to work. You've got to understand the audience and the platform and the challenges. And I can't even wrap my mind around it most of the time because I'm not going to dance. But I think it's great what they're doing. It's just there's still a lot of, as a business, like, if I'm on that, does that mean that what am I giving up security wise? All that stuff you have to really work out.
Definitely. Yeah. And you have to just be careful, as you mentioned. I mean, from a security standpoint, it's not just like, oh, hey, my kid's on there. It's not a big deal. It's all, your kid's on there. Who knows what kind of data they collect, but chances are it's accessing your contacts probably, and that's even just by installing the app potentially. So make sure you read, and I know no one reads these, but terms and conditions, make sure you read those. I know Apple has their new their food labels, on the apps, and so they're supposed to tell you they have to be upfront on their app in terms of what is actually, and that's not Apple, that's the developer. They have to tell people what they're actually doing. For example, being transparent. So that's something you want to look for in your app store. If you've not read that in a while, go check the app and see what's there. But overall, so basically this week's update, at least from TikTok, is this TikTok ads library. And, I know we're not using TikTok very much. I know that, we're not advertising on TikTok, but I do see some value in this. I will say, I do wish that this was a little, I was looking at this and I'm like, this is actually a little underwhelming in the fact that there's 5 top ads that they're showing me right now. And then if I go to like showcase, there's a few more. I like the fact that you can watch ads and get an idea of what kind of ads are actually being run on the platform. What do you guys think about this? I mean, is this something I should maybe borrow and bring into some of my other social media channels?
I think it's, I think when you showed that screen, you could really easily see what the audience is. And so, you've got to look and see if your business fits in that. I mean, there's no old dudes there with a beard at all. So would my ad work? I don't know. It may, because it might stand out in the feed, but you can get a good idea of when you're scrolling through this, like who this target audience is. Now, if your product or service fits this, this generation's, and you understand TikTok culture, then yeah, I would throw money at this, no problem. If I was selling something like, there's I don't know why this came to mind, but like sneaker repurposing. If I was selling, sneakers, reselling market, there's this huge market now for reselling this. I would be on TikTok all day,
Yeah.
pushing that kind of stuff because that's who's buying them. So, I think it depends on who your audience is, and really diving into that culture.
And what's interesting about, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a great point, Jeff. I think we forget sometimes that the audience on these platforms is not all the same audience, right? It's not like, when somebody says, "Oh, well, I want to get in front of everybody." No, you don't. You have a specific audience that you serve, and you got to go where they are. So I think, like, even though Gary Vee's on TikTok as an example, that doesn't mean that Jim Fuse or Jeff C needs to be on TikTok, because we may be spending a lot of time to get very little out of it when we should just focus on the platforms that we're already on. And I think that that's what businesses have to be careful on. It's not to say, go ahead, create your profile, maybe, do social listening and see if it makes sense. You might get some ideas, maybe make some connections, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. And like with this, I could see where maybe the ads give you ideas for Instagram, right? But I just can't see that working on, LinkedIn. I don't even know if they work on Twitter.
So one of the things that I've really thought about lately is the, how do people discover this content? Like if I'm selling or I'm advertising, how is it discovered? And how much is the algorithm throwing stuff into it? So like TikToks, they're wanting you to stay on that. They want to give you entertainment, and it's really short clips. And, that's the way it is. My whole thing is I'm really concentrating on search. So to me, there's only two real platforms that still really use search in a way that makes sense for like repurposing and discovery. And that's for me is like YouTube, which I'm really, working on, because that is a search engine, the second largest there is. Yeah. And Pinterest, which is a visual search engine. A lot of people think it's a social platform, but it's really a visual search engine. And so that stuff is, I can have my stuff be discovered. I can look at content that's working and put more of that out there. So the search feature for me is like, okay, how can I leverage that for my clients and for myself? Because those are still search-based platforms. TikTok has got this algorithm. Facebook, of course, their algorithm is, it's just crazy that even people who want to follow you aren't seeing your stuff. And so, Twitter with, there's things, it's a fire hose a lot of time. So how do we get into search? So that's one of the things when you're thinking about your audience, and like even TikTok stuff is like, okay, how are they going to find that even as an ad? I know I throw money at it, but where is it surfacing? So I think that's one thing you have to take in under advisement as well.
Great point.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, if you look at these screens that are up here, I mean, the crazy thing is a lot of this, it's going to come down to product placement. I will say, I do like the fact that they're only telling you categories and locations. So I think that's actually really, I mean, granted, you could probably watch the ad and figure out, hey, this is this particular product, it's about product placement, but I think that like you could get some ideas here to borrow, and the one other thing that I think for me is the big draw here is that, you look here and most of these are all, we got Ireland here, we got Italy, we've got Germany, we've got Belgium, we've got Vietnam, like we've got Russia, like there's there's one US one here, a couple of the UK, but for the most part, these are in other countries. And I will say this, other countries, the way we do social in the States is very different from how it's done overseas. A lot of people overseas, they aren't taking that they're not thinking about saving that content and repurposing it. They're thinking about that short, quick way to get content out there, because for the most part, they also don't have the resources, i.e. they don't have the, powerful gaming laptop or things like that to do this. They're doing a lot of this from a mobile phone, if even a tablet, if they have one. So, it plays right into their wheelhouse. So I'd say if you're a business and your customers are overseas, then I would consider, if you're going to run ads or you need some ideas, look at some of the ones that are available here on this platform and see if it's something that you can incorporate into your business. Don't take the whole exact thing and, do the exact thing that somebody else is doing. Come up with something though that's creative. And if you're not sure how to do some of these things, I mean, the great thing is TikTok does make it easy to do that, but reach out to some of those companies to see if they can actually teach you a few things, do a little bit of that networking we talked about earlier to help you level up your skills.
Christian, when you were scrolling through those TikTok ads,
Yeah.
one of the things I was noticing, and I'd have to watch all the ads, but I bet most of those sponsorships are organic feeling. Like it's not, we're so used to the 30-second commercials, like, hey, come in, we got a fire sale this week. Come get our mattress. It's 50% off. That's how we like think of ads. A lot of us old timers anyway. And so I'm seeing a lot more trending and a lot of companies are fighting this, but I think this is kind of the way it's going to happen, is this organic feel to the advertising. Like sometimes you're like, is this really an ad? Or this is funny. And this is cool. This is informative. It's not really an ad. And so, the Harmon brothers are some of my favorite people who create, really sticky, entertaining, awesome ads. They did the Squatty Potty and the Poopery guys. And so the way they do that kind of stuff is really, really cool, but it's organic feeling. It doesn't feel like you're getting an ad. And I've even found with, the sponsors that I've had to do in my live show, the more organic I can have, instead of like, by the way, this is done by blah, 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 they do really a lot better. And they actually drive more traffic to like a landing page or a link that I bring up on screen by being organic and saying, this is what I use and this is why, and not like, by the way, today's show is brought to you by, that kind of thing. It doesn't work as well anymore. And I think that's a trend that if we're smart as marketers, we'll really, analyze and dive into and figure out how we can do this in a more real way. The more real you are and the more organic your ad sounds, I think the better off it's going to perform. And I think those ads that we saw on TikTok kind of, showcase that pretty profoundly.
And it's funny you mentioned this because I literally just pulled up an ad. I was just grabbing their YouTube link, and it's a video about selling without selling on their channel. And that makes a lot of sense though. I mean, it's where, people won't admit they hate to be sold. Like, they go into something and they're like, oh, I'm not going to buy anything. And all of a sudden, like, they walk out with a bunch of stuff because, they got sucked in. And, and that's normal. It's typical. So, if you do a good enough job, and that's the thing, if you do a good enough job, the marketing is working, versus, if you're like just trying to use the old method, like you also have to look at like your synergy between who you're trying to reach. If you're running the old style ad and you're trying to reach the, the audience that knows about that's the type of, advertising they respond to, then go ahead. But if you're trying to reach, for example, the younger demographic, you need to adjust your practices of doing things to, so that you don't seem out of touch or, you're sort of uncool, I guess you could say.
Right. I'll never be cool, but I know what you mean.
Jem, anything you want to add on this?
No, I think we've beat TikTok to a dead horse.
That's right. We have.
Definitely. So I think, do we have any more topics? Let's see.
We did have TikTok allowing YouTube to potentially play natively within or Twitter, I should say, without having to leave Twitter. I think that's a really good thing. I think the question is, will that count as view counts and view time on YouTube? I think it will, from what I've heard, but I haven't been able to find this yet. But I definitely like the idea. I know that even like to Jeff's point earlier, right? Tim and Jim show, we multi-stream it to YouTube because we want people to start finding the show there, because the topics that we're talking about, people may be searching for in the future. And so I think this is another good thing, right? Here's the thing about Twitter that people don't think about is Twitter, from what I know, is the one platform that doesn't punish you for putting links in, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these other platforms, if you put a link in, your LinkedIn post or your Facebook post, that you're going to take them somewhere off the platform, they throttle you. They don't do that with Twitter. And I think that's another one of those little things that we don't think about. Even a podcast, right? Put your podcast into Twitter and get people to go listen to your podcast. I think a lot of podcasters miss out on that. They're like, I'm on all the podcast players. Yeah, but I got to find you.
Right. Yeah. I think that's, and I'm pretty sure that it will count as a view count. I know, like, so Pinterest, you can actually embed YouTube videos and they play natively inside the platform, but it counts as a view count. over on YouTube. So I have a feeling it will, but how do you know how, if you know you have it? I mean, it said it was iOS only, but I guess you just can play videos in there, because I just posted one and I can't tell.
Right.
So,
That's what I was thinking, is you'll see a video when you hit play. I guess it'll start playing and it won't take you to YouTube. But I haven't found one yet that I'll look. But I'll have to go look at yours a little later, Jeff, and see if it works. So
yeah, I think it's great, because everybody wants some view counts, and being able to cross post some stuff over there, I think is. I love it. And also build up your YouTube channel, which I know is big build for YouTube. And I know Twitter, everybody wants more video on their platform because they know it's sticky, and people watch it. And so it'll be interesting to see if YouTube people, or that content that really is shorter, will work better on Twitter or not. YouTube has the YouTube Shorts now, because it's this short content that's going over to the special short shelf. And I think it's interesting, the shorter content that everyone's trying to get involved with. And so how, will that make a difference? The shorter stuff on Twitter, will people watch it longer? Because, the only negative I would figure, because, YouTube's algorithm's all based on watch time, like how long people are staying on there. If you're putting it to Twitter and people aren't watching it, they're watching the first 3 seconds, and that might potentially hurt that video. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works.
Well, and the other side to that also that makes me really wonder how effective this is going to be. I love the fact that you don't have to then go off to Twitter. For example, like, the other day I was trying to watch a video somebody sent me on Facebook, and it was trying to open within Facebook, and then the video wouldn't play. And then they're like, hey, do you want to go over to YouTube? So basically I had to go through like 5 steps to just play a video. At that point, I was like, forget this. I'll just go to my computer and play it or something. Right. And so the one thing though that does concern me a little bit about this, I'm glad that they're letting you play it in the app, but you're potentially going to lose out on the engagement. So if the comments and all that sort of stuff are happening on Twitter, there's no way those are going back to YouTube at that point. And then that's a metric though that YouTube uses to show your video. So they want to see, for example, when your video first launches, they want to see the initial, like how many people are viewing it. Are there a lot of comments? Is there a lot of engagement going on, to then decide whether to show that video to help you rank for some of the tags, versus if I'm doing that on Twitter, that's not making its way back to YouTube. So
that's a great point.
Few concerns there. I mean, that to me is a big concern, actually. The fact that I can watch it natively, I'm glad, but I don't have to but I do miss out on potentially the monetization side, but especially that ranking side. You said YouTube, is one of your best search engines. And I 100% agree with you on that. That YouTube, Pinterest, they're both really strong platforms that a lot of people sort of, they sort of discount that, oh, it's just for this. Like there's a lot, you can get a lot of good stuff off of those platforms. So anything else you guys want to add about this update? I mean, I also tested it. I don't happen to have it either. But anything you want to add about this one, Jim?
Just in the thread where that was on Twitter, they're also going to be allowing photos, where sometimes you upload a photo, it kind of gets cut off on the top and the bottom. They're actually going to allow the full photo to be seen. I think that'll make things more visually appealing.
I think that's a big deal, because a lot of times, when you're sharing links or you're doing some like video, like I like to repurpose some video stuff, and it sometimes will crop. And so I think that's going to be a big deal.
Yep.
And and I don't know if y'all remember, I mean, I'm going to say from back in the day, I'm sort of dating myself here, I guess, in a way, but you remember how like you had to get the right size, if you're working, like I was working for a major Fortune 500 company, and we had to get the right size of our image, and we want to make sure it looked right across all the platforms. So we'd be like, oh yeah, Facebook's this, and this image size, and then, oh, Twitter's this one. And then it'd be like, well, no, it's cutting off. Then we got to replace it. So this would be really nice.
And then Retina devices came out, and you had to like up your resolution, because it'd be, on a high-end iPhone, it'd be blurrier. It was, you're not dating yourself that much. So,
but yeah, no. So that's a good update. I mean, and there's nothing that you have to do that. I mean, they're testing on Android and iOS, which is fantastic. When you tweet a single image, the image in the composer now will, show exactly how it looks in the timeline. So I love that. And they're also testing apparently ways to upload and view 4K images as well underneath that same thread, Jim. So there's a high quality image.
Though.
Do what?
I said for that, I always kind of crack up about this everybody wanting 4K video and everything else. Do you realize the
Yeah.
size of the file? It's
Yeah, it's
like
Oh yeah.
monstrous.
it just 1080 is just fine.
Well, and then the other side to that is if you want to play, like if you're somebody who wants to play, say you want to edit in 4K on your computer, you have to have a computer that can handle 4K.
Mhm.
And some of those files are massive, and you don't have the ability to do that. So I do want to bring up this 4K option as well. By the way, this is in the data usage section, but it's also under the data saver option as well. So you can choose whether to have those high res images on cellular or Wi-Fi, and then high quality image uploads. I will say this: I'd love to see a way to, like, for example, if I started off because I had a low data package at some point. I'd love to see the ability to almost have that data embedded to where then it can go back and, like, as, because we know things are going to increase. Because what's the
Right.
problem? You're going to upload it in this really low quality image, and then because, hey, maybe you don't have a lot of data, and then you've grown your business or something like that, and now you want to do these high res images. How are you going to be able to fix that on your old ones?
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, so now then, by the time we figure out 4K, they'll come out with 8K, and then we got to
Yeah.
figure that out. Just
no, absolutely. So what we want to do real quick, and I know you alluded to this, by the way, Jeff, earlier when we were talking about a couple of topics. We had a couple of questions for you. Jim,
Mhm.
I don't know, do you happen to have those questions handy for Jeff?
Yeah, hold on one second. I had
Sure.
them here a second ago. Where did it go?
And Jeff, by the way, I want to talk Pinterest with you after the show. I've
Sure.
got a couple of questions for you as well, because I've always said this on the show that Pinterest has been the dark horse of social. That a lot of people always discount it. They say, oh, it's just for people that like want to do like home decorating and all that sort of other stuff. But there's so much more out there
Mhm.
with Pinterest, and it's tough getting people to get outside of just the standard social platforms. But definitely check out
Yeah.
Pinterest.
So Jeff, the first
Yeah.
question would be, are there a couple ways that we could maybe tie Pinterest into other social media other social media platforms with Clubhouse?
So yeah, so the one of the things that we talked about a little bit is like if you continue the conversation like we did the live show and then we went over and talked about it. You could do that, and with the rooms even now, Pinterest, you could actually, I think you can have a link now to Clubhouse rooms if I'm right, or clubs. Isn't there a link where you can share?
Yeah.
They can go back in. So you could actually create a pin and say, like, almost like a tweet chat, like, hey, every Wednesday night at 7, we're talking about this on, and have a pin that actually could link back to that, because Pinterest is so evergreen and gives so much long-term traffic compared to everything else, that if you're trying to build that kind of thing, that would be a great way to tie it in with, if you have a weekly show, you could tie it in with a Pinterest promotion. And also now Pinterest has had stories. So the algorithm is really pushing their Instagram stories, which is, Pinterest stories, which are like Instagram stories. And they actually, the cool thing about them is they live forever. They don't go away. And you have like a week if you want to make edits to it. So it's kind of cool, but they're really pushing them really high in the search section of Pinterest. So you could do like a story about your Clubhouse room and now they don't let on stories, you can't have links go out like you can regular pins, but it goes back to your profile. So there's some ways that you could be creative on and trying to think of, using Pinterest stories to push them to your Clubhouse rooms, because they're really, I did a video, like a video stories pin that I put up there, and like in the first hour, it got like over 2,000 impressions. It was just nuts how they're using it right now. So those are a couple of ways that you could kind of tie it in, like a weekly show or like that Pinterest promotion for stories and stuff. So that would be one of the ways. Try to think of it as a search thing. Pinterest for a long time has really struggled with event-based stuff. Like if you had a special event, like Jim, if you were doing a conference like next week, putting that on Pinterest, it takes so long to like snowball. It's been hard to do events. They've just come out, and I just released a video about it. Pinterest Premier ads, where they're special ads that kind of can help with that, like get it out right away. So that may be an option as well. But yeah, it's monetizing on other ways. Once again, it's all about continuing the conversation. So I would put, like, if I was doing one for Guy Kawasaki, I would ask Guy your question about NFTs. something like that on like Facebook, where you could point them to Clubhouse, or on Twitter, like, be very specific about, what you're doing and how to move people to Clubhouse. Of course, you're going to miss half the people. So let's say it's Twitter Spaces, pushing it over there. Like, here's what the topic is. Ask your question. And if you had a guest, like, hey, I've got Jim on the show. He is a genius when it comes to Amazon Live. You want to ask any of your questions, really make it specific, so people who are interested in that topic will jump over so they can ask that conversation. It's just like live video. People love asking questions and seeing their avatar. So the more you can like incorporate your audience in that and drive them over to a space or a Clubhouse room is what I would do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there another question, Jim?
Yeah. So we kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when these new social media platforms come out, Jeff, should a business be focusing on monetization or just establishing a presence?
I would, I kind of mentioned before, like, as business owners, we're always thinking about, okay, how can we monetize? Otherwise, we're wasting time, and we don't have, like, solopreneurs and entrepreneurs don't have a lot of extra time. So I would reserve your handle, get your thing in there, and then look at it. But also, don't go in like guns a-blazing, like, hey, get into my free course about, to me, it's always about relationship and adding value, going there, providing value. And the biggest thing for me, and I know a lot of businesses when they first started, was I feel like, I can't share anything because they're stealing my stuff and they won't pay for my expertise when I need this business. And Jay Bear and I'll mangle the quote, but he said, like, just because you have the recipe, it doesn't make you a chef. So it's okay to share out those little pieces of like your knowledge. Like, here's how you make a Pinterest story. I sell that service, but it doesn't, people still will pay me to do that because they don't want to do it themselves. And so getting over that hump, I think. And so thinking of those ways, when you go into a new platform, is like, how can I provide value? Like, here's what I've learned about Clubhouse, or here's this kind of thing. And that way you become a knowledge expert, and people trust you, and eventually, network with you, and other opportunities happen.
And it's also not one of those things where, like, for example, speaking of the chef side, so I do have a culinary arts background, culinary arts degree as well. And so, it's one of those things where, like, you have to be confident in yourself and your skills and whatnot, and know that you're not giving, like, for example, if it's a recipe that has been in your family for, like, or information or whatever that's proprietary, like, let's use Coca-Cola as the example. Right. So Coca-Cola has a very specific recipe for their product. It's passed down, however it gets passed down throughout their organization. Not everybody who works at Coca-Cola, for example, gets access to that. Obviously, you have NDAs, all that other stuff that go along with it. But that is something that, like, you want to be careful with, obviously, putting out there, because it's your trade secret. However, if you're just sharing information about something, it's not proprietary. So it's information that, like, anyone can go on the web and, go to Facebook or Instagram, like how to run Facebook ads, for example. I can go to Facebook and I have Facebook Blueprint, which is a whole program put together by Facebook on running ads. So for me to then go to somebody else and say, like, hey, let me pay you for that, like, information, you have to have something really, really good and be really good at what you do for people to then want to pay you for that. It's not just because, like, hey, I can teach you how to do Facebook ads, because for the most part, people can just go to the platform and get that information for free.
Right.
So, but you do have to be confident in yourself and your business, not being, back to your point earlier, Jeff, not being spammy, for example, in your approach that you're, taking. You want to provide value. You want to build relationships with people first. And then, and then it's not like, oh, now I've hit that, like, line, and now I can start pitching them on things.
Right.
It's still a natural progression that needs to happen before you just move into selling mode. And then sometimes you don't even have to sell people. People are already sold on you. So you do have to keep that in mind. Very cool. Love all the information, by the way. So what we want to do is I'm going to switch to tool time real quick. We've got two tools, and I'm going to let Jeff, you pick which one we start with, by the way.
What was the first tool? I know which one I brought, so you go first.
Okay, so we have mmHmm and we have room
Yeah.
research. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about mmHmm first, because I really like this tool. I think it's got a lot of potential. I was on the beta version, the testing of it, and so I think it's really cool. One of the things is the guy who came up with Evernote. So I mean, yeah, Evernote. I mean, I use that all the time.
That's actually really cool. I did not know that part. That's very cool.
So the guy who's and had really fun ads. I mean, I really like the way they were doing stuff. So it's a really cool way, especially if you're making presentations a lot. This is something that you might want to look at it. It's almost like to me, it always reminded me of using like Weekend Update, where they have like graphics in the back and they could really easily walk through their slides and still be on screen. You can move yourself around, make yourself smaller. So when everybody is so like sick of Zoom calls and the way they look and the presentations there, this might be a great option for you. I think it's got a lot of potential. I was even trying to hack it for doing some live video. It's got kind of a virtual green screen that can be a little wonky sometimes. So I always like to have real green screens and, be properly lit and all that stuff. But it's a really simple interface. It's not like a lot of bells and whistles, but it really is a nice way for you to, put your slides up behind you, switch between those things. They have some really cool special effects. So yeah, I would check it out if you do a lot of presentations.
And I've actually, if you want to,
I want to bring Jim up. Yeah.
I've got.
Here we go.
So you can
Jim
see.
Is now
I
in his
don't have
library.
I don't have a green screen, and so you can see get a little bit of that that cut off. But they do have some interesting effects you can put in. You can also do things as a presenter, right? Seems a little crazy, but like if I want to make myself red or purple, so I can be an alien.
You're like a hologram of Star Wars.
Yeah. So I can do a little bit of that. So, I mean, I think it can be fun to play around with, but I think to Jeff's point, and this is why I'm not a big fan of these virtual things. You can see my hands are getting cut off because of the lighting, but I think, it definitely lets you do a lot for presentations. I think I don't know if we've talked about it specifically, but, another great program to use for presentations is Prezi. Is one that's become a favorite of mine, and here I'm in my control room where I kind of like to,
you really the universe,
yeah, and then I can, and this stuff moves, so and some of this too, when you're doing presentations, it's about pattern interrupt, right? You want to get people to see different things, like these are moving behind me, and these are all part of the program.
The cool thing too with this is you can import your slides, and you could be off of Jim's shoulder, and you can go through them, and you can move yourself around. So yeah, like that. So it's really cool how you can use it to, present in a cool way where you're still on the screen interacting with people, but your slides are behind you, which is kind of interesting that most people don't do. And like capturing people's attentions it's a kind of a cool way to do it.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I mean, the way you've presented that one there, I mean, that's where like going into like having like a weekend update or putting your presentations off to the side, does make it a potentially good tool to use. You still have obviously the banding going on around you, Jim, with the green screen. It's actually not as bad now that you shrunk that down, actually.
Right.
But that is something to keep in mind. And to Jeff's point, you do want to make sure that you have a proper green screen. If you're going to be doing something like that, have a proper green screen behind you. In this case, I don't have one, but have a green screen behind you, light it correctly versus just lighting it. Because otherwise, if you just light it, you're going to end up with the banding,
shadows.
All sorts of stuff. And to Jeff's point, I mean, if you look at Jeff, I mean, you've got I assume that's a physical background behind you.
Yeah, that's a physical background that I've had forever. Yeah.
So there's various ways you could do this. Like I've got a vinyl backdrop behind me, just threw something up. Jim right now has, he's got a what looks like a real wall, but it's actually a vinyl wall, I think, as well. And then Jeff has taken the route of a physical set. So you've got various, and maybe you don't even call that a set, but like it works. So
yeah, it's actually just. It's actually, it started with my kids got me that man cave sign, and then we went to like Hobby Lobby or somewhere and got all the rest. But it's actually just Lowe's barn siding that's hinged together because I have to pivot. I'm in a small like portable building in my back pasture. And so I can shut the side door and it will let my air conditioner flow. So I can there's all sorts. I have what's called the cone of cleanliness. Everything else is crapped out around me, but right here in the cone of cleanliness, we're all right.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I discovered yesterday, if you're looking to change your backdrop as well, there's actually, I know a lot of people have been using laminate wood flooring to
Mhm.
put on their wall, but there's actually a lot of, I guess you'd call it like stick on like wallpaper rolls, and they've come
Oh
up
yeah.
with all kinds of, like I could get the wood look, I can get, the distressed look. There's bricks, there's like stones. There was actually one I saw, Christian, that looks similar to your white bricks. So you could just put it on your wall
Mhm.
and you could have that look, all the time. And so for me, this is my studio. This is my constant look. But if I actually put it like a wallpaper on, then maybe I start putting some stuff on the wall like Jeff has, to
Mhm.
make it a little bit more,
What?
you know,
Yes. So one of the tips that I always tell people, like when we go back to mmHmm and the green screen,
Yeah.
whatever image you're putting on behind you, blur it out a little bit. Go into Photoshop
Mhm.
or Canva and just do a little bit of like a Gaussian blur or something. And that way, mine is a real depth of field. Like my lens is actually slightly blurring that background out. But if you have to use a green screen, don't just slap off on something like, Jim had some of those backgrounds on there. Blur it out a little bit, and that, I mean, people will not be able to tell, and it looks like like you're in a real set. But
Mhm.
if you have it sharp behind you and you're sharp, there's a disconnect we do in our brain. We're like, oh, he's in front of something.
Yeah.
So being able to do that with those images that you put on there, it goes a long way.
And that's a really great point. I mean, and the thing is, making a Gaussian blur onto an image or applying it, it doesn't take that long. It's what, like,
No.
it's like a David Allen thing. Like, it takes 2 minutes pretty much to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And Canva, I think you can even do it in now, and some other programs. You don't have to have like Photoshop or something.
yeah, no, exactly. So it makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So I'm going to turn the next tool over to you real quick, by the way.
Okay,
And,
cool.
and
This
for,
is
yeah.
this is Rome Research, and I discovered this, and I've been using it for probably 6 months. And it's almost like having a second brain. So I love Evernote, big fan of that. But and
Mhm.
I'm also really the guy who does Accidental Creative. I can't remember his name now. But he talks about processing your notes. Like I take a lot of notes. I see stuff out in the wild. I want to capture it. And but this allows me to go in and actually everything is cross-linked. So I use it for putting together talks. I use it for presentations. I use it for come up when I do actual trainings. Everything is network. So like if I was watching Jim's show, you guys' show, and I could put it in the comments, I could take notes on it. I could link it back to thoughts I had. Everything is cross-indexed. Everything's hyperlinked. So I actually have templates set up for projects I'm working on. I have this, you can see it on the screen there. It says like that has a date one. So like if you just jump right into the tool, you can just really easily add like thoughts for the day or ideas you're having, and then you can go back and find them. That's the thing. Everything is findable. Everything is cross-linked. So it is amazing. And it seems like, why didn't anybody think about this before? But it is just genius for putting stuff together and researching things. So like, I'm always thinking about creativity. I love the how are people creative and thought leaders, and what hacks do people have creative. So I have like a tag for creativity that I can just go and click on that tag, and everything that I've tagged creative shows up, and it's actually annotated on my notes. And it's such a time saver. And there's tons and tons of YouTube videos on how to set this up right. So you want to spend a little time before you just like dive in. Go watch some of those videos and set it up. Get your templates ready. Like I have one for, like I said, for projects. I have one for articles that I find across the web. There's some plugins that actually, like if I highlighted something that was on Christian's website where I really liked a quote, it would actually pull that, drop it into Rome Research, and give me the link back to the site so I could cite it later. Just amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. And how much is this, by the way?
I think it's $15 a month. They have I think there's a free plan. You can try it out for a while, but it is totally worth the money, especially if you're creating content.
Definitely. Yeah. And so do you use this for writing at all, or how do you, or use it for?
I do use it for writing. So a lot of times I like to use like either drafts or I'm the, is it Ulysses? I think is one of them.
Ulysses,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I use that one a lot, but I drag it in here so everything's linked in. So I usually like do my writing on an app and then drag it in. But like for like, I like, I'll be going and I'm like, oh, that's a great YouTube video. That's a great point. That's a great YouTube idea that I could use. So I drop that into my ideas thing and in my YouTube one. So you can use hashtags, you can create pages, but like it's all hyperlinked and it's just, I'm telling you, it's game changer.
Fantastic. Yeah, Jem, have you used this one at all, Jem, or you plan to check this
I
one
have
out?
not. I think that it's definitely interesting. I do like the hyperlinking to the other, where you kind of like are able to dive down into the other topic.
So it's really great. Like for me, when I create a course or something, so I go and I have each of my sections there. Well, those link to the actual script, and underneath each one of those has a check mark. Like, okay, I've written the script, check mark. And so you can add like, things like you do, so you can track your projects, but also link back to everything. I can go to my script, say, okay, I written my script. Okay, I've recorded it. Okay, I've uploaded it, and it's all linked together. I can click on it if I have like, that was a great Pinterest article. I'm going to pull that one in, and what did they say again? I can click on it and it takes me there. I mean, it's really a time saver when you're like putting together things. It really is like a second brain.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and that's a key thing. I mean, people need to take what they have in their head and they need to just dump it somewhere, even if it's just to start dumping all that stuff that you're not always, that you're, for example, you're like, hey, I have this really good idea. Don't just immediately act on it. Dump it into a note-taking app as things to work on, for example, or things to look at later, so that you're not constantly thinking about that when you're trying to focus on another project that you need to get done. So definitely check out Roam Research. Again, $15 a month, and looks like a fantastic app actually. So I'm looking forward to using this. Do you know if it's PC or Mac, or
it's
PC and Mac,
web-based, but you can also have it for your iPhone. You can make a short, or your mobile. It can be iPhone, Android. It's a shortcut, so you can go right into it and just dump your thoughts. So, by the way, the guy I was talking about, Accidental Creative, is Todd Henry. He does a great thing, and he's the one who got me thinking about having a day where I process the notes that I've taken throughout the week. So I used to take a ton of notes, and then they just go everywhere. Yeah. So I have a day where I try to process what I've done through the week, and that's helped a ton.
That's actually a really good point about setting aside that time to allow yourself to process, because for the most part, what a lot of people do is they get on that conveyor belt and they just go, 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 go. And they don't ever take the time to stop and say, you know what, is this actually working? They're just continuing to do what all they're doing. So you do need to make sure you make some time in your day. Don't think you have to be busy 24/7. Recharge, rest, recharge. When you give yourself that time to take a break, I think you're going to also find greater clarity as well in what it is that you're working on, or where you're, running into a roadblock. So, and as Laura Williams says here, Sunday planning. Yeah, definitely, find some time, even if it's just, a couple of hours, just block out a couple of hours of time to allow yourself to, ponder like what all you're working on. What are the big things? Are you in the right direction? Are you headed in the right direction? Or the things that you need to fix, and so forth. This has been awesome, by the way. I know we ran a little bit over time. I wanted to keep it going because I was like, you know what? Jeff is just amazing. Lots of really great information. I said you're probably the best guest I think that we've had on. Sorry to all the other guests, by the way. You're like the best guest in terms of like, being able to carry the conversation. I mean, just talking about, just a lot of topics in a lot more detail, and just like, hey, this is new from Facebook or Twitter this week. So I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What's the best place for people to get in touch with you, by the way?
So we started a new channel where we do a live show. We have a blog, and we're going everywhere, even Amazon Live, thanks to Jim, which is doing really well. So it's socialmedianewslive.com. You can find us there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, Social Media News Live.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. So be sure you connect with Jeff, check out his show. Jem, what's the best place for people to get in touch with you? Is it still Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter, but also if you want to check me out on Amazon, we have just go to dealcasters.live, and it takes you right there. We just interviewed Marion Abrams, who works with the Spartan community, and they have a podcast. We talked about, how she helps people with podcasts, talk about podcasting strategy and gear, because that's part of what we do on the show is we're helping live streamers and podcasters get started, talk about gear. And Jeff, we'll have to have you on sometime and
That'd be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Then we talk about how to use Pinterest and some of the stuff
Cool.
to use with that. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
And we'll have to also have him on Launcher Live, I think, so that way we can figure out if there's a repurposing strategy or a way to incorporate Pinterest into live streaming.
Yeah.
Cool.
So awesome. Fantastic. So for those of you, just a couple of quick notes. We've got a blog post going out over the weekend, socialchefs.com/SC284. There's also the Alexa flash briefing as well that goes out for those of you who want the quick 7 to 10 minute version of what all we covered. It's super quick, by the way. In addition to that, we're going to be joined by Sarah Monroe next Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, youtube.com/social chefs or facebook.com/social chefs. Again, I want to thank Jeff Sieh for being a guest this week on episode 284 of Social Chatter. And Jem, as always, thanks a lot as well for co-hosting with me. So it's always appreciated. So thanks a lot, everyone. And we'll see you all next Thursday. Bye.